I hope that people can learn from this. I hope that other people can learn from this. And I hope that Nick, frankly, gets help. I hope he fixes the situation. And I would be here to support him if he decides to clean up his act. If he decides to say there's no problem and nothing is wrong here.
What? Excuse me, what? All of a sudden, James Lindsay can't stop saying capitalism and private property and how the family is reproducing capitalism? All right. We'll look into that later. We're not going to interrupt our Nick Rekieta stream for another James Lindsay update. But if that's true, that is all the more evidence that James Lindsay is stealing from my work and my ideas, because I've been the only one talking about the nuclear family consistently on the goddamn internet for over a year and a half. Yeah, if that's true, we won. Does that mean we let up on James? No. You want to know why? Because he's stealing my shit. That's not okay. And he's doing it but this is all the proof that we need that he was always stealing my stuff in the first place. And anytime he claims, oh, I came up with it first, when he's literally parroting my language verbatim, he's a liar, man. Anyway, we'll look into that later. We're not going to do that right now.
Here, and there's nothing to see here. I don't know what to say. Yeah. Last Iron Man said, you're a good man, Andrew, and I remember how amazing you were on the trial stream with Nick. My prayers are for Nick and his family. If he needs help, I hope he gets help he needs. I do too. But the only person that can help Nick is Nick. Many of us have tried to quote unquote, that's not the lawyer I want to be. I don't want to be that person, right? That's not what I want. And certainly I don't want to be a person who ends up getting arrested for controlled substances. It's just not something not a way I want to live.
Absolutely not. James.
Now you must bear the Shawnachu medallion. No, not happening. Ugly Dance says, sorry, shit. We're not children.
Hang on. I'm sorry. I know this is only interesting to people in my community. I just want to take a quick look at this. People that are my regulars will understand this. Look at this. Hello, James. Hello, James. From 9/24 tonight. We all know that communism targets private property, capitalism. He's never specifically defined capitalism as private property before. And everything it can claim supports the idea of maintaining private property rights. But communism is a religion, and that's what it's really after, is your soul. Private property is just a proxy to that end. We're fucking winning. James can eat an entire bag of fucking dicks. We are winning. The reason James is doing this is because of us, because we have harangued his ass, and we are living in his head, and he knows it, and we're not going to stop. This is not over until James Lindsay completely denounces Gnosticism. This is not over. This is our second fucking win this week. We got our first win on Monday when we took over James's chat and he had to block everyone. Now we've got another win today where James is literally saying capitalism finally and defining it as private property ownership. I'm sorry people don't understand what this is about because you're just here for the Nick stuff. We'll get back to that in 1 second. But fuck you, James. And when I find that tweet where you're talking about how the nuclear family upholds capitalism and reproduces it through social reproduction theory, then we're going to stop again. And if people want to know what I'm talking about, you can find a recent video on my website titled something to the effect of Proof That James Lindsay is Stealing My Work. All right, let's go back to legal mindsets. I apologize for that brief intermission for people who don't know what that was about.
A lot of people, and I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, you're grifting off this, et cetera, et cetera. Look, everybody is streaming off this right now.
I'm sorry, James Detour, one more. Just grant me this because we've been working on this all week. Hang on. James is definitely talking about the Nick, I can't find that tweet that you sent me the screenshot of. I wish you had just sent me the link. Okay, never mind. I found it. This has taken months of haranguing James Lindsay to get him to this place. Months. There's lots of much more torture theory on how a family is capitalist or bourgeois that reproduces capitalism, including transferring generational wealth, but it's quite difficult to make sense of it, and it feels that... James, it is not at all difficult to make sense of it, you moron. It is actually very easy to make sense of it when you actually watch their trainings and their videos. They explain it quite clearly. You just refuse to watch their trainings when I used to send you the video of them. Marxism isn't really about disrupting the family to disrupt capitalism. Yes, it is, you fucking retard. That is what social reproduction theory is. It's about disrupting the family so that the individual souls within it will cleave to the collective instead of to each other. Again, it's after people's souls. It's Gnostic. It's Gnostic. It's Gnostic. We swear it's Gnostic. James is going to bend the knee to us whether he likes it or not. Marxism primarily targets family, faith, and property for this simple reason. And he keeps going and going. We will be reviewing all of this on Socialism Saturday. Don't you worry. I don't want to spend any more time on it. I really do apologize for people who are here for the Nick stuff, but you have to understand, if you're new to my space, that's actually what I cover most of the time. And we have been peer pressuring James Lindsay for months to get him to say this information, and he's finally bent the knee to us. And it is like dozens of people have been on James's ass for months to get him to tell his audience the truth. But we do not stop until James denounces this Gnostic bullshit, because he is lying to everyone about what is going on, and it is completely unacceptable. James will bend the knee to us. This is our sign that what we're doing is working, and we're only going to do more of it. All right, we're definitely going back to Nick Rekieta now. We're not going to do any more James tonight. What I do want to spend a little bit more time on is this. Hello, James. Hello, James. Now, for those who don't know, my community has been haranguing James Lindsay for months now in order to get him to say the words capitalism, and in order to get him to admit that queer theory is not a Gnostic sex cult. Queer theory is an attack on the gender binary, because the woke left believes that capitalism created the gender binary, which put men in the workplace, women in the home, doing the unpaid labor of raising the next generation of proletarian workers. That is the nuclear family. The nuclear family is the literal means of production of capitalism, according to the left, because social reproduction theory, which is the idea that social systems will reproduce themselves until they are disrupted. The reason the left wants to disrupt the nuclear family is because the left perceives the nuclear family to be the literal means of production of capitalism. And if they can control the nuclear family, or better yet, if they can abolish the nuclear family, then they are abolishing the means of production of capitalism. So we've been trying to get James to say this for a while, and back on Monday, we took over James's chat when he was premiering his Gnostic sex cult queer theory episode. And we, I think rather politely told him over and over and over and over and over again that he was wrong. We owned James's chat. That chat was ours. There was no comparison. My audience knew more than James's audience can ever dare dream to know about this, because we have actually been watching queer Marxism for like a year. And I don't think James was happy about that, because he banned dozens of members of my audience for correctly stating that the goal of queer theory is to abolish capitalism. The Mary Nardini gang, which is basically the authors of what is the queer Marxist activist manifesto, called Towards the Queerest Insurrection. They explicitly state that queer liberation means the annihilation of capitalism. We have clip after clip after clip after clip of real queer Marxists in the real world saying their goal is to abolish capitalism, that heteronormativity means capitalism, that queer is all about pushing against the normal, the dominant, the quote-unquote legitimate. That all means capitalism. And we've been trying to get James to admit this through shaming and peer pressure. And last night, James posted an extremely long Twitter thread where he's coping like a little bitch. But look at this. Towards the end of that Twitter thread, where he's coping like a little bitch, he seems to get into the family and capitalism. And he's saying capitalism a lot more than James has been saying capitalism all year. So what this means is we're winning. I said this last night on the stream I was doing about Nick Recato when we found out that James posted this. We're winning. And James knows it. And what this Twitter thread is an epic cope where James is like, yeah, sure, it's kind of about capitalism and it's kind of about private property. It's kind of about abolish the family, but really, it's a cult. It's a cult. It's a religion. It's a cult. I swear it has to be. Otherwise, I have to admit that it's really not Gnostic. James is doing everything he can to rationalize in his head about how he's definitely not wrong about the Gnosticism, bro. And that's because of us. And that's because of the haranguing that we've been doing for months. But he's not quite there yet. He's not there yet. We are not satisfied until James completely recants the Gnosticism bullshit. Because James has been lying to millions of people for however long he's been on this tirade. For over a year now, he's been pushing this Gnosticism stuff. James literally wrote a book with Logan Lansing that is all about this Gnosticism bullshit. James is literally promoting Lisa Logan, who is on some unhinged tear about the law of attraction and Oprah and a worldwide WEF global government, one world religion conspiracy theory. James has been pushing this bullshit on millions of people for months and months and months and months and months. And he has horribly lied to them. He has misled them. He has distracted them from what's really going on in the world. And we are not going to accept it until he completely capitulates to us and recants. But this is a good first step. James is at least nudging in the right direction. Possibly he is working through the cognitive dissonance of coming, like possibly James is just experiencing a lot of cognitive dissonance because he knows he's wrong. He knows we're right and he knows he's wrong and he knows that we caught him and he knows that we know that he knows he's wrong. And so now we just got to keep pushing. Don't stop. Other people are starting to call James out on this Gnosticism bullshit as well. So let's read this Twitter thread and let's experience the epic cope together. All right? Yep. Well, it's not just because of me. It's because of all of you. I'm not doing this on my own. I'm just the person on the video that's pushing all of you to get in James's face and tell him that he's wrong. So we are all doing this, guys. All of us. I am not more important than anyone else. We all know that communism targets private property, capitalism. By the way, this is the first time in a very long time that James has admitted that, first of all, that James has overtly said the word capitalism, but not only did he say the word capitalism, he admitted the definition of capitalism is private property. That's us. That came from us. That did not come from James. That came from us. We all know that communism targets private property, capitalism, and everything it can claim supports the idea of maintaining private property rights. But communism is a religion. And what it's really after is your soul. Private property is just a proxy to that end. No, James, that's a cope. That communism is a religion is, I suppose, the first thing that needs to be understood here. Because if communism's not Gnostic, then James has to admit that he's lying to everyone. If it's a religion, it's probably pretty obvious it's after souls. After all, of Marx's writings attest to this fact in one way or another, but his earlier writings are clear. And I'm not going to go through all this stuff. Like James is pulling out documents from the 1840s. And this is the difference between my approach and James's approach. Because did Marx provide the foundation for a lot of queer Marxist activism that's going on in the world today? Yeah, sure. Okay, fine. But Marx has been dead for a long time. And I have spent 3.5 years listening to more queer Marxist training, queer activist training, far left socialist training, radical revolutionary socialist training than I have listened to more of this shit than anyone in the world. I have gone undercover at their events. James has not. I've heard what they say in private. James has not. And my approach is that I look at what real activists are teaching today to each other in the real world. I don't look at shit that was written almost 200 years ago. It's not to say that's not a valuable thing to do. I think it's an incredibly valuable thing to do. But if you want to know what real leftists are doing and what they believe and what their strategy is in the real world today, you don't look at a document that was written 200 years ago. You look at what they're teaching in the real world today. Because there is not always a direct translation from a document that was written 200 years ago to what real people believe in the real world today. This is like basic, guys. If you want to know what a leftist is doing, you go to the trainings that they go to. You go sit in on the classes that they go to. You go see what they're teaching each other. And they're not teaching each other this obscure Marx stuff. That's not to say they don't read Marx. They do, but this isn't what they teach each other. It's just not. So I'm not going to read this. You can go read James's 800 tweet thread if you want. But we'll skip down a little bit. But blah, 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 blah. Communism is a religion. Communism is a religion. It's a religion. It's a religion. It's a religion. The practice of Marxism is the application of socialism. It involves doing socialist praxis. James loves that word. I fucking hate that word. Making the socio-political economic environment more socialist. Well, it's not just the economic environment, James. Try again. So that the changed society will socialize man towards the socialist spiritual reality. Holy shit. Seriously, James? Communism is what you would get if socialist praxis were ever fully implemented and perfect and socialist inversion of praxis made people true, transcendent individuals. He's actually arguing that socialist activists are trying to indoctrinate you in a cult where you will transcend all of society. Like, does this make sense to anyone else? Endless details can be given here. Then why don't you give them, James? If endless details can be given, then why don't you give them? Pinky swear, trust me, bro. Endless details can be given. Okay. Well, I don't trust you. You've lied to people enough, James. I no longer trust you. You've lost your privileges. I wanted this to be a thread about how its true target is the soul. So I'll stop elaborating there. Yep, the goal of communism is to abolish private property, James. It's not about capturing your immortal soul. The goal of communism is to abolish private property. What's a soul? Well, who knows, really? But it's certainly what makes us who we are, on a more profound level, more than mere meat. But that's exactly what Marx was interested in, who we are. We are socialists, but we cannot realize our true socio-spiritual nature because of capitalism. Are you kidding me? Guys, pontificating about what a soul is not going to do anything to defeat the left. Like, is James on drugs? Is James, like, smoking a lot of weed or something? Because this is the type of conversation that I would have with someone if I was, like, really high, except that James is having this conversation every single day on Twitter. Yeah, basically James is saying, Carlin is right, but really she's not right, because I can't admit that Carlin is right. But Carlin's right, but she's not that right. I mean, come on, man. Marxism believes it knows the answer to the question of the truth of human nature, and it's socialism. In Gnostic fashion, it positions the bourgeois capitalist class and its beneficiaries. Oh, James, you're using my words again. Isn't that funny? As a kind of socioeconomic demiurge, James gets off on this word so much, that keeps the proletariat unaware of itself. No, James, that's not true at all. The proletariat in the world of the radical revolutionary socialists are very aware of itself. So that's just not true at all. This is why Marxism is so interested in going after private property. When you have a secured right to private property, you can be yourself and understood as an individual. Your soul is yours, with less compulsion on it. Where James is a little bit correct here is that individual liberties are considered to be a form of private property under socialism. So he is correct that the individual is what they're after. But why Why is James holding up, like, what is it? Let me ask you this, and I'll ask for my chat. What is James not explaining about why the left goes after individualism? Why does the left go after individualism? In the meantime, I'll take this chat. Let me know the answer in a second. What's good with your narco boyfriend, Big Tech? He's not my boyfriend. I'm internet single. You can go ask him what's up with him. I have no internet boyfriends. I am internet single. Not my business. Anyway, back to this. Why do socialists go after individualism? Is it because they want to capture our immortal soul? Why do socialists go after individualism? Socialists go after individualism because they have to have everyone be on the team for collectivism and fight against capitalism. Okay, give me more. Socialists go after individualism because it is opposed to collectivism. Give me more. Individualism versus the collectivists. Yup, give me more. Now we're heading in the right direction. You cannot have meritocracy without individualism. Keep going. What does individualism support? What can you not have if you don't have individualism? An individual shows you do not belong to the community as you are independent. Give me more. Individual liberties is one of the things that are part of capitalism because it's considered private property ownership. Give me more. Come on. What does individualism uphold? Cut K1. The individual is capitalism. You cannot have capitalism, which is defined as private property ownership, if you do not have the individual. It's about capitalism. The goal of the left is always and forever to abolish capitalism. The individual also holds up hierarchies. Hierarchies support capitalism. Socialists want to abolish all hierarchies. The individual upholds private property, which is capitalism. This is always, 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 always. Everything the left does, everything the left says, it always goes back to wanting to abolish capitalism. Individualism upholds capitalism. Without individualism, capitalism fails. It has nothing to do with your immortal soul, James. Nothing to do with it at all. They need to get rid of individualism in order to get rid of capitalism. That is why they're doing it. Individualism equals supported by capitalism equals uphold the private property rights of the individual. Individualism is against equity. Of course, equity is socialism. Equity means Marxism. You cannot have equity and capitalism in the same place at the same time. In order to achieve equity, it's the abolition of all private property, because then everyone has access to all the resources. Individualism equals profit motive equals capitalism, or is greater than, or less than, as the case may be. All right. Well done, guys. Well done. You know more than James Lindsay. Congratulations. Let's continue. Of course, Marxists mostly want to loot people and use their evil religion as an exercise, but the fact remains that the religion wants you to overcome your individuality in the favor of the Marxist communist collectivism, which requires transforming your soul. He's so close. He's so close. If James had just stopped without going into the immortal soul part, this tweet would have actually been pretty accurate. Because communism does need the individual to go away so that everyone can be assimilated to the collective. But it has nothing to do with transforming your soul. That's a religious argument. James is basically forming his own goddamn cult around this stuff. James is making more religious arguments than the socialists actually make. Yes, James, come back to reality. We need you to hinge back into reality, bro. Let's see. Continuing. Where did I leave off? Hang on. What the fuck? Where did it go? Uh-oh. 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 No. Where did I leave off? Where the hell? Okay. Oh, here we are. Here we are. Okay, this is the one we just read. Marx is really clear that sees the means of production as a phrase that references factories, farms, but also human nature downstream from historical material. Well, again, James, this is why we listen to socialists in the real world today, because Marx is not directly translating to what is going on in the real world today, because we have gain of function Marxism now. And James, I know you know what gain of function Marxism is because your buddy Logan Lansing has been stealing my line that we came up with literally on a live stream. And now we were saying gain of function Marxism. I wrote a whole article about gain of function Marxism. What gain of function Marxism is the additional influences that have come in specifically from the queer anarcho-communist subcultures that are really influencing queer Marxist activists today. Marx and Mao, and like you could probably say Marcuse and all that stuff, are all influential in terms of providing the foundational literature. But at some point, the strain of Marxism that we're dealing with mutated, and we are dealing with the mutated strain. The mutated strain is heavily influenced by queer anarcho-communist subculture. And we talked about that before. We call it gain of function Marxism. I've written about it. I did a podcast about it. Then all of a sudden, Logan Lansing started saying gain of function Marxism. Where the fuck do you get that? Magic, I'm sure. You know, I'm not going to talk about the 18th century. I don't care. 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 Talking about Mao having a soul, whatever. Okay, let's keep going here. Marxism is obsessed with private property because it believes that humans are socio-spiritual, determined as individuals, fallen from the collective by virtue of their property rights and the ability to say, this is mine, that is yours. You and I are not the same. He's so close. He is so fucking close. This is actually not far off. More than that, Marxists, as dialectical materialists, believe that the prevailing socioeconomic conditions determine who people are, their socio-spiritual souls, through the inversion of praxis. So property rights makes them believe they are competing individuals, not socialists. James is correct about this. They believe that capitalism creates competing interests, and that's inherently unfair, and they want to get rid of all competition. But again, this is just an epic cope because James desperately needs this to be about Gnosticism. But the religion stuff is all just him coping with the fact that this is not about Gnosticism, and he's trying to shove the square peg in the round hole to make it fit, but it doesn't fit. Understanding Marxism this way casts new light on his critique of religion. What Marx is really criticizing religion for is the fact that it nourishes and protects the soul in the way that isn't Marxist. Okay, James, no one cares. Blah, blah, blah. We're not reading this. This is not relevant to what activists are doing in the real world. Oh, here's the part where I really wanted to get to. Here it is. The Marxist attack on family is similar. Family is a sanctuary for the soul, who we are, and a place for it to grow into mature fullness as an individual. Like religion, this interrupts the communist cult recruitment plan, so the family must be disrupted. James is saying that queer Marxists want to abolish the family because they want to be able to steal your soul. Those of you in the chat that have watched probably over like hundreds of hours of, we have watched hundreds of hours of queer Marxist training in the last year. Pop quiz for the chat. Why do queer Marxists want to abolish the family? Based on all you've seen real queer Marxists say in the real world, why do queer Marxists want to abolish the family? I'm not going to answer this. You guys are going to answer this. Bot says he's really annoying me because he can't admit it's not Gnosticism. The family reproduces capitalism through social reproduction theory. That's why they want to abolish the family. They want to abolish the family because the family reproduces capitalism. They want to abolish the family because the family reproduces capitalism. Queer Marxists want to abolish the family to overthrow capitalism and because they believe children are the private property of their parents. Exactly. Families are creating new capitalists. We know that they want to abolish the family to disrupt social reproduction of capitalism within the family because they believe the children are the next generation of proletarian workers. To solve the social reproduction problem by disrupting the normative gender binary. Remember, guys, a couple months ago when we first started haranguing James about this, James explicitly said in a tweet, he's like, I've talked about the problem of reproduction. I've covered the problem of reproduction. James claims that he's covered the problem of reproduction, but he doesn't understand what the problem of reproduction is. You guys understand what the problem of reproduction is more than James does. They want to abolish the family because the family reproduces capitalism. They want to replace the nuclear family with the collective to stop reproducing capitalism, and that the nuclear family creates classes and oppresses queers. The nuclear family reproduces and upholds capitalism. Capitalism created the gender binary, which created the nuclear family, which upholds capitalism. The nuclear family reproduces capitalism through social reproduction theory, creating the next generation of proletarian workers. Parents teaching kids to mow lawns for extra money is a threat to queer Marxism. It is, Crispy. The gender binary creates hierarchical classes. Families produce the next capitalists, and they also don't want private schools or homeschooling either. Break the family, break the chain of capitalism, and remake society to their desires. Guys, how smart is my chat? My chat knows this stuff in and out. They can repeat it. They can teach it to anyone. This is the purpose of what these streams are. It's not just for me pontificating on the internet to feel smart. What I want to do is make it so you guys can repeat this stuff in a way that is easily understandable so that you can go out and teach it to other people. That is the only way this works, is if people like you start teaching other people what is going on and what the language actually means. Take a couple more. So when they say liberate children, they mean they want to destroy the nuclear family because it reproduces capitalism and children are slaves to the system. The family upholds the gender binary, which upholds the nuclear family, which upholds children as private property, which upholds capitalism. Nuclear family's mode of kinship is private property and capitalism. The family does the unpaid labor of raising the children. They want the collective care and the raising of children. Women are the unpaid laborers in the home, as are the children. That is what the patriarchy is. So proud of you guys. But it's going to get even better. It's going to get even better. Let's see what James has to say about the family. You guys are going to love this. Ugh, why is Twitter doing this weird thing now? Okay. We read that one already. Let's just read it again. We'll go into the other tweets after this. The Marxist attack on the family is similar. The family is a sanctuary for the soul. No. And a place for it to grow into mature fullness as an individual, like religion. This interrupts the communist cult recruitment plan, so the family has to be disrupted. There's lots of much more tortured theory on how a family is a capitalist or bourgeois institution that reproduces capitalism, including by transferring generational wealth. But it's quite difficult to make sense of and feels ad hoc. That's because it's ad hoc. James Lindsay thinks that the abolish the family literature is quite difficult to make sense of because it feels ad hoc, because it is ad hoc. I don't know exactly what he means by ad hoc, but what I will say is that my chat, because we have watched hundreds of hours of queer Marxist training, hundreds of hours of abolish the family training given by the people who are pushing these ideas in the real world, my chat just very clearly defined what the abolish the family literature says. My chat just very clearly defined what abolish the family activists are teaching in the real world. My chat can even name the specific abolish the family activists that are pushing this stuff because we've watched so much of them. James just might not be up to speed with us, guys. James just isn't up to snuff with where we are because James feels like this is difficult to understand. Everyone here understands it, James. Why is it that everyone in my chat understands it and you do not? Why is it that my chat has watched Sophie Lewis extensively? Why is it that my chat has watched Emmy O'Brien extensively? We've watched Chi-Chi Bhattacharya out of Yale. She pushes this stuff too. We watched Jules Gill-Peterson. We can name these people, James. We know who they are. But it gets better. It gets better. Marxism isn't really about disrupting the family to disrupt capitalism. Really? Really? Marxism isn't really about disrupting the family to disrupt capitalism. Then why have we watched dozens of presentations about social reproduction theory given by socialists where they very literally say the goal is to disrupt the family because social reproduction theories mean that social systems will reproduce themselves until they are disrupted? And the system they're trying to disrupt is capitalism. Marxism isn't really about disrupting the family to disrupt capitalism. It's about disrupting the family so that the individual souls within it will cleave to the collective instead of to each other and to self. Again, it's after people's souls more than the other stuff. Are you kidding me? And this is why James gets no points for saying capitalism in this thread. This is why James gets no points for saying private property in this thread, because he is still clinging on to this fantasy that this is a Gnostic cult. James is literally telling people that he is trying to save their soul from the evil socialists. Marxism primarily targets family, faith, and property for this simple reason. It's an obsessive, totalitizing regime that believes it uniquely knows the truth about human nature and what to do with it, and its objective to process it and remake souls in its image. I won't digress long, but this attitude is reflected in blah, 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 blah. Not going to go into that. But that's it. This, to me, is like the most important couple of tweets in this entire thread right here, where James is literally saying that he does not understand the abolish the family literature that everyone in my chat on a regular basis understands. And James is still clinging on to this bullshit that Marxism isn't really about disrupting the family to disrupt capitalism. Yes, it is. What he's really saying is, Uncle, you got me now. Please leave me alone. Please don't disrupt my podcast again. Please don't take over my chat again. Please stop coming in with new accounts and taking over my chat. Please, 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 please. Uncle. But I'm sorry. He's just not good enough, James. Not good enough. You are not going to continue to gaslight people into this Gnosticism bullshit just to serve your own ego, bro. We're on to you. We are going to keep going. We are all going to create new sock accounts to take over whatever podcast we want. I'm not saying, James, we're going to take over every single time you launch a podcast, because then it would lose its effectiveness. But we're paying attention. We're watching every single thing you say online. We're watching every single thing you do online. Everything you say and do will be used against you until you bend the knee to us. And if we want to come and take over your chat for another podcast when we think it's strategically effective to do so, we will do it. And there is nothing that you can do to stop us, bro. Everyone will create more sock accounts. They're not hard to create, James. You want to keep blocking people for telling the truth? We'll just keep coming back under new names. You will bend the knee to us at some point. And it's either, James, either that is going to happen, or I'm just going to continue amassing a larger and larger army because you are pissing off people who understand what the truth is, and you have pissed off more people than I think you understand. That's it. That's all.